the Canon R5 and the Atomos Ninja V Plus. 8K RAW, 4K 120. It's supposed to be a match made in heaven. But if you have a Canon R5, is this $1,500 upgrade really worth it? From the day we got our Canon R5, I think every single one of us that are owners have been trying to find ways to unlapse the absolutely incredible potential that's locked inside this maddening, beautiful little body. I mean, this camera is so close to perfect, but its flaws are just to drive you crazy. And one of the things to get around some of those limitations of the Canon R5 revolves around this, an external recorder. I have said before in the past that if you get a Canon R5, you just need to include an internal recorder as a non-negotiable part of your package. It's the main way you can unlock so much of what your Canon R5 can do. Now, that being said, the Atomos Ninja V Plus came out promising to unlock so much amazing aspects of the Canon R5. Now, I went ahead and rented one just to try it out. I've been playing with it a couple days, and there are some very, very surprising things about this camera that I think you need to know. I'm gonna start off and go down the list. Now, the first thing is, before we go down this, if you have a Canon R5, you have to update to firmware update 1.4.0. If you don't have that, there's no point in even trying this out because that is what you need. The reason for that is Canon Firmware Update 1.40 allows 8K RAW through the HDMI 2 right up here into the Ninja V Plus, which is amazing. It is so beautiful. It looks so good. So let's talk a little bit about how to do that if you're interested and some very surprising things about it. The first thing is this: if you want to get an 8K RAW image from your Canon R5, you have to come into the menu, and if you switch all the way up here to the 8th thing, you'll now see some new things. The first thing is HDMI RAW output. Just click that on, boom. And you also have something that's important, which is standby low res. Now, Atomos says turn this on, and the key to that is letting your camera shut off and only worry about up here. This does not affect RAW files, only if you're doing standard stuff. Now, once you do that, your Atomos will pop on and you will have an 8K RAW signal. And you can see right here, it's getting me 8K, 24 frames a second, ProRes RAW. Now, I can hit the menu button back on my Canon again, and when it pops up, if I come back, you'll see that my movie record options are kind of interesting. I can record 8K up to 30 frames a second with different compressions if I have a card here, if I want to record at the same time to make proxies or something like that. Now, you can do 29.97 true 24, or you can do 23.98. So just nice to have. It's good options. I like to go 23.98. I'll hit OK. And once again, you can see the ProRes RAW is here. Now let's talk about some of the surprises here that I found about this. The first off, it's exporting a log file. Cool, I got it. Now, if I come up here to my Atomos and go to record, let's say for some reason I want to switch to a ProRes 422. Maybe I don't want to have to necessarily be stuck with that raw footage. Well, if I come up here to change my format to say ProRes and hit confirm, you will see a warning popping up saying that the Atomos Ninja V can only record in ProRes RAW if you're exporting a RAW codec into the camera. That's understandable. I get it. That makes sense. Here's where I found the biggest disappointment in 8K recording to be in the Ninja V Plus. And it's a big drawback, in my opinion, that I think you should be aware of. Let's say for some reason you want to get an 8K image, you want to be able to use the time, be able to get around the time constraints on the camera by using the Atomos Ninja V. You don't want to record RAW. In theory, that should not be a problem. I'll come back over here, I'll cut RAW output off, and then I'll come back and I will shoot in a standard 8K footage, right? Not RAW, just a nice standard 8K, and I want to record in, say, 8K ProRes 422 on a Ninja Atomos V Plus. If you look here, here's the problem. It's telling me on my back of my camera I'm recording in 8K at 24 frames a second, But up here on the Atomos Ninja V Plus, it maxes out at 4K. Now this is a major problem I consider for me if I'm a Canon R5 user. I love shooting in that 8K RAW. It is gorgeous, do not get me wrong. But I don't want to shoot in 8K RAW all the time. Sometimes I want to shoot in a smaller, more compacted format, like a ProRes 422, maybe if I want to do H.265. For whatever reason, even though the Canon R5 will send an 8K RAW signal through the HDMI, it will not send any other type of 8K file out, which means you cannot record 8K backups or get 8K links out here unless you're shooting RAW, which means you are going to be getting gigantic file sizes. I'll be honest, I really can't understand why that's a thing, but that was something that completely shocked me on the Atomos Ninja V Plus. I was very shocked. I don't know if there'll be a firmware upgrade. I saw no information about that whatsoever, but it is something that really surprised me, and I haven't heard that anywhere. I think if you're a Canon R5 user, you absolutely need to know about that if you want to get 8K footage on the Ninja V Plus. Now, the other thing that completely surprised me about RAW was this. I might have seen it in some little press release, but no one has pointed out that 8K RAW is nice, but the files are huge. Why can't we just get a nice 4K RAW image that is smaller? And here's the surprise. You can actually get 5K RAW from the Atomos Ninja V Plus, but you gotta crop 8K to do it. Let me show you how to do it just so you know. I'm gonna do a whole nother video on this because I think more people need to know about this. But if you come back here in the menu, I'm gonna come back here to RAW output. I'll cut it on. And as you can see, it says 8K RAW. But if I come back here now, and now if I go to movie cropping and hit enable, well, look at this. If I do record quality, it gets me 5K options all the way up to 60 frames a second. Yeah, you heard that. 5K, 60 frames a second raw output from the Canon R5, which is pretty dope. I'm just gonna sit here, I'll put it at 60 just so you can see it. I'll hit OK. And if you look here now on my Canon Ninja V Plus, it says 5K, 60 frames a second, ProRes RAW. So this is a pretty cool little thing. I was completely blown away when I discovered this, but you can only do it in RAW. Once again, there's no option to do anything like this in a standard 4K. Now, that being said, of the 8K and 5K RAW, let's talk about what I would consider the biggest single disappointment I encountered as a Canon R5 user with the Atomos Ninja V, and that is 4K 120 frames a second. It overheats like crazy on the Canon R5. I was really hoping I had a 120 frame option on the Ninja V Plus. On the Canon R5, and you don't. You absolutely do not. The Ninja V Plus may be able to record 4K 120 frames. It does not record 4K 120 frames a second from the Canon R5 as it exists today in the third quarter of 2021. Massively disappointing. Let me show you what happens when you try and do that. If I come back here to menu, all right, so if I want to come back here now to high frame rate, I'll enable that. Once again, on my camera, it's telling me I have 120 frames a second on the camera, but as you can see, it maxes out at 4K 60 frames a second on the Atomos Ninja V, which massively disappointing. I went and researched this. Apparently right now, the only cameras that can currently record 4K 120 frames a second on the Ninja V Plus are the Sony FS6 and FX9 and the Zcam E2 and E2 M4 models. And they say there's going to be more models to follow. They said absolutely nothing about the Canon R5. I think you really need an HDMI possibly to get up there. I don't know if there may come out in the future, but this is something that I consider to be massively disappointing, and was one of the main reasons why I think would justify having to pay this much more for a Ninja V Plus over the model of the Ninja V. And just in case you're wondering, the 8K RAW is very, very big. I went ahead and did a couple of tests where I recorded for 1 minute to show you a couple of different things. I'll put up a list here showing you the different sizes there, and you can see just how big the 8K RAW files are. Now, I did find that the 8K RAW ProRes was a little bit smaller than the 8K RAW file that comes inside the Canon R5, so that could save you a little bit of space over time. And one nice thing is having that 5K RAW option was significantly smaller than 8K if you want to just have a RAW option to do that. Okay, so that's basically where I am, the Atomos Ninja V Plus and the Canon R5. So my conclusion in all this is this worth the upgrade? If you have a Canon R5, should you consider getting the Atomos Ninja V Plus? And I'll be honest, I am torn on this. It is so expensive compared to the Atomos Ninja V that it really depends, I think, where you're coming from. If you're someone that you're doing a lot of static type shooting, you're filming concerts, you're filming plays and performances, maybe you're doing tons of interviews in controlled situations, having that unlimited 8K RAW option could be an option if you're not worried about card space. That being said, the lack of flexibility in how you can export 4K, not having 4K 120, which is a huge thing in my opinion, those things make this not worth it to me at this time. That being said, there could be more firmware updates that continue to upgrade and do that. If I could get standard 8K out of this and record ProRes or even H.265, I would really, really consider buying this, even if I couldn't get 4K 120. But those things right now tell me that for me, I would prefer to hold off and wait on that and spend that extra several $100s on other equipment that definitely would work for me, especially because the Ninja 5 works so good as is with the Canon R5. But it's a tough one, man. It's really gonna be what you're shooting and what you need. But I just wanna let you know about that. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions about this. I would love to hear from you. Yeah, guys, go out there, keep on shooting. Yeah, and I'll talk to you soon.